Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me in the series I call Belief in Yourself. It kind of comes from the phrase, belief in yourself can, belief in yourself will, and belief in yourself is that is sort of the impetus behind belief in yourself. It's really meant to put together a number of stories, practical steps, and things like that that can help you if you choose to. And I'll tell you a little how it works and how it's worked for me. There's a number of things that I've done for years, and none of it I've created. All of it has come from other books. It's come from education. As a matter of fact, one of the main books that started me out was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, all the way to his Laws of Success, which was written in 1927. The books that I read, besides regular books like Sherlock Holmes and The Hobbit and things like that, I read books like Charles Duhigg's Power of Habit, or Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. You know, I mentioned Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Science of Being Great, The Science of Getting Rich. There are so many different books, and I'm going to make reference to all of them as we do this. But one of the reasons that I'm using this format is because I have always been a storyteller. One of the exercises that we're going to go through, it was one of the things that helped me reveal who and what I like, my passions. So we're going to go through that in a later series. But I'll start off with a very simple story. So there was a lady who was very well known and very famous. She spoke at a college in Foothill back in the 70s, in the early 70s. And this young 12-year-old boy was supposed to open the door for guests at his grandparents' house. And he stood there making sure everybody got in the house fine. But then when the door knocked and this lady arrived, inside the house, there were a number of dignitaries and people from around the city of Mountain View that were very, very excited about meeting this person. But then what happened was, when she walked into the door, she stopped and she looked at the 12-year-old boy and she leaned down and she said, "What is your name?" The young boy told her his name. And she got a little closer and she says, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Little boy shrugged his shoulders. He was 12 years old. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And then she leaned and said, "You can do anything you want to do. You tell them your Auntie Maya said that you can do anything you want to do." Well, that was 44 years ago, and the little 12-year-old boy was me. And it's not until now that I'm a much more grown and mature man, that the realization of what she said comes to mind now. And it's one of the main reasons why I decided to start this channel, was to be able to go through some of the things that I have done throughout my life that hopefully will aid you. In one sense, it'll be cathartic for me to kind of share what I went through, but the other is that in hopes that it can help someone else, is I want to be able to tell a story, have some practical steps that you can walk through that may help you if you choose to. And so that's the purpose for this, is to use all of the learning that I've done, all the knowledge, all the things that I've gone through. Sometimes I'll use analogies, other times I'll actually read things from books or other thoughts, and I'll use my actual life to hopefully be able to help you find that thing in your life which you would be the most happiest about. What is it you want in life? What is it that will make you happy? Well, we're going to talk about things that that hopefully will guide you there. And I want to start by giving you just a real general rough idea of what some of those things are. And I'm going to read them directly out of the book, The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill, that you can pick up. So during our sessions, we're going to talk about the mastermind, which ties into a number of other books. The first one that comes to mind is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It has to do with coming together with other people in a harmonious way to create purposefully and harmoniously so that you can create the kind of bond that will help you do something special. So the first lesson we'll go through is a definite chief aim, a purpose, a goal, something that you want to do. The next will be self-confidence. Self-confidence is extremely important for us to be able to get up and get out and move forward. It's that thing that's like the ignition or the explosion of gunpowder that drives us when we feel self-confident. The third thing is the habit of saving, which is interesting. Somebody said, if you do not have the ability to save, you cannot be a leader. I thought that was very interesting, but we'll talk about that later as well. Initiative and leadership. Without initiative, you will never become a leader, just like with the power of the habit of saving. Initiative is the thing that starts and moves us on that journey that we need to go. Imagination. Imagination is the thing that is the creative force that we can create something new. And we'll talk more about that later as well. We'll talk about self-control and what self-control is, what it means to us, and how it affects us, and what are some practical things we can do to acquire self-control. Then, the habit of doing more than paid for. That's really, really important because of whether you believe in karma, whether you believe in the laws of attraction, or you believe in the universal law of what goes around comes around. When you practice the habit of giving more than what you're paid for, you end up generating a great amount of force. Because as someone has told me before, you can't outgive the universe. If you're in a giving mood and you give, the universe will give back to you. So we'll talk about that later. Pleasing personality. This ties into the mastermind and also the habit of how to win friends and influence people. Incredibly powerful. When you have a pleasing personality, you become like a magnet. You're a very, very attractive force towards doing things. And then accurate thought. This is the thing that sharpens the sword. It's the thing that allows you to think clearer, to kind of get, I think the 80-20 rule is a really good way to kind of view it. That 20% can give you the results better than the 80 sometimes. So it's important to think accurate so that you can focus on those things. And then we're going to talk about concentration. Concentration is the thing that allows you, when you tap into it with your imagination and into some other things that we're going to talk about around where creativity comes from and how we access it and how we attain it. We'll see that concentration allows us to force, and the book that I read that really taught me a lot about that is the Master Key System, and the steps for meditation, as well as the meditation steps you'll find, and we'll go through that. And then cooperation. Without cooperation, you can imagine how a lot of these tie together with mastermind, with having a pleasing personality. But without cooperation, you cannot achieve some of the big things that you want to do in your life. Cooperation is that thing where you work with others and you have a view and a vision and something you want to do, but the cooperation between you and those others, you start generating something called organized power, the ability to do something larger than just yourself. And so cooperation is important, and we'll talk more on that later as well. Failure. This is a really big one because failure ties into the fears that we have in our lives, and fear is the one thing that will upend, it will deflate, it will move and remove you from the place where you want to be. It'll stop you from doing the things that you most desire in your life. And we'll talk about the fears. I believe there are 6 fears is what what's his name, Napoleon Hill wrote about. Things like the fear of love, the fear of criticism, the fear of growing old, the fear of poverty, a number of different things like that that cause us to look at what we do. And those fears are the things we're going to look at. But remember this, that fear, or I should say failure is only failure if you choose it to be. I think Napoleon Hill wrote that within the seed of every failure, there is an equal or greater success that is waiting to take place. So it's a view and it's a way to look at that. And we'll look at that more. So we're going to talk about tolerance. Now, I have to tell you, tolerance is the one thing that will close the book, or I should say intolerance is the one thing that will close the book on anything you try to do. Intolerance will make enemies of friends, and it will cast you into a place where you say, basically nothing can be done at this point, because intolerance shuts open-mindedness and cooperation, a pleasing personality, and most of the other things that I talked about earlier. And so the last one's called the Golden Rule. And if you guys are familiar with the Golden Rule, it really has to do with, in a nutshell, do no harm to anyone else. It's one of those things that we don't always remember. I believe the Sufis say you cannot get a drop of sweet water from a cup that is filled with bitter. So it's looking at ourselves and seeing how we're approaching life, how we approach others, and a real thing for open-mindedness, especially with a lot of the changes in society these days, the things that are happening. Without the Golden Rule, you lose a large view of being able to live a life in a way that is going to be pleasing to you and pleasing to others. So I look forward as we go on this journey. I have at least 25 books that, but I'm not going to go through each book individually. I'm going to do it much more. I believe there was a show called Connections years ago by BBC, and it had to do how different things associated with each other that were seemingly random, but they weren't random because they happened at a particular time or a place that gave someone else the idea. That's the same way I'm going to do this, or I should say maybe the same way I'm learning Mandarin right now, is that once I learn how the vowels and how the things go, as I learn the words, I now will be able to do this. So it's a much more natural flow of the steps that we go through to try and attain our own personal happiness. So I look forward to anything, and if you want to send an email to me, belief for yourself. That's belief, the number 4, in the number 4 yourself at gmail.com. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free. And I look forward to hearing from you. Please, if this was in any way useful, granted it's just the introduction, please subscribe, like, or leave a comment. I will follow each of these things, and I look forward to getting to know you better on this road that we're going to travel together.